Every 3rd of March, Hina Matsuri is celebrated across Japan. The event, also known as Girls' Day or Dolls Festival, celebrates the health and happiness of young girls by displaying Hina dolls that protect girls from evil. On the 3rd of March 2011, this was no exception in the southwestern Japanese city of Kumamoto. 3-year-old Koko Shimizu spent the day creating Hina Matsuri dolls at her nursery school before she got picked up by her mother Mayu at the end of the day. After returning home, Mother Mayu and Father Seiichiro take their 2 youngest children, Koko and her 5-year-old brother, to the nearby Big H Shimizu bypass store. After arriving at the store, Koko and her brother were looking at books until the young girl came running to her father to say she had to use the bathroom. Koko urged she really needed to go and skipped towards the bathroom by herself. The worried father followed his daughter with his eyes, but could no longer see her when she turned the corner. Seiichiro quickly paid at the register and followed the path of his daughter. After minutes passed, the father started calling his daughter, but to his surprise, Koko was nowhere to be seen or heard. He panicked and started to search the store with the help from his wife and store employees, but the young girl seemed to have disappeared into thin air. However, when police arrived and reviewed the camera footage, it became clear that the missing child had not run off by herself. What happened to the 3-year-old in these fateful few minutes on a day dedicated to health and safety for young girls? Let's take a closer look at the disturbing and tragic case of Koko Shimizu. March 3rd, 2011. During the day, 3-year-old Koko Shimizu celebrates Japan's Hina Matsuri at her nursery school. Koko was the 4th child of the Shimizu family, born on September 21st of 2007 after her 3 older brothers, to parents Seiichiro and Mayu. The young girl was described as bright and energetic and was named Koko, meaning heart, in the hope that she would grow up to become a kind and compassionate person. After creating Hina dolls that day to fend off evil, Koko gets picked up by her mother and is brought home. Somewhere around 4 p.m., a suspicious man in his 20s arrives at the Big Ace Shimizu bypass store by bicycle. He is seen walking around the store for around 3.5 hours, wandering between the store and bathroom area with an empty-looking backpack. He's not only captured on CCTV footage, but is also seen by multiple witnesses. One supermarket employee said, "I passed by the toilet just after 4 o'clock and he was sitting on a bench. He was just sitting there doing nothing, occasionally standing up and sitting back down. When I saw him in the boys' toilet around 5 o'clock, he wasn't even going to relieve himself, but he was just washing his hands at the sink, smoothing his hair with wet hands, and closely checking himself out in a mirror." 2 hours later, a little after 6 p.m., one witness at the supermarket reported, "Around 6:10 or 6:15 p.m., he was sitting still on a bench in front of the bathroom. I smiled at him, and he smiled back. He was on the bench again around 7:20 p.m. 7:20 p.m., Koko, her 5-year-old brother, and their parents entered the Big Ace Shimizu bypass store. 39-year-old mother, Mayu, and 41-year-old father, Seiichiro, do some shopping, while Koko and her brother enjoy themselves at the book section of the store. 7:30 p.m. While Father Seiichiro was paying at the supermarket's register, Koko suddenly told her father, "Dad, can I go to the bathroom? I need to pee." Seiichiro was still packing his purchases and told Koko to wait a minute. However, Koko said, "I really need to go now," and skipped towards the toilet by herself before Seiichiro could stop her. Her father remembers her to turn the corner to the somewhat hidden restroom area 15 meters ahead, following his daughter with his eyes until he could no longer see her. After finishing at the checkout register, Seiichiro immediately followed his daughter. Around 7:31 p.m., Koko was followed by the suspicious man who had been sitting across from the bathroom area. While it's reported that Koko's fingerprints had been found in the female bathroom as well, the man either lured or took the 3-year-old girl into the multi-purpose toilet located just between the male and female bathrooms. The man then proceeded to indecently assault Koko, while the worried father was waiting just at the other side of the door. Seiichiro started calling out Koko's name, but didn't hear a response. He asked his wife Mayu to check the female bathroom and checked a nearby 100-yen store, but both showed no signs of Koko. Seiichiro then knocked on the multi-purpose toilet door, but only heard a male voice saying, "It's in use," not knowing of the heinous act that played out behind that very door. Meanwhile, the man in the toilet panicked when he heard Seiichiro's voice and started to strangle Koko for the next 4 to 5 minutes until she died of asphyxiation. Koko's body was then folded into the man's backpack amidst the chaotic search that transpired just outside the bathroom area. 7:45 p.m. While both parents frantically searched for their daughter, the man emerged from the multi-purpose toilet with the now bulging backpack. He made his way through the commotion with his hat down and even passed Father Seiichiro before leaving through the front entrance of the store. Mother Mayu later stated, "I thought maybe it was him, but the backpack wasn't big enough for a person to fit inside, so I shifted my attention to check inside of the toilet. When the multi-purpose bathroom turned out to be empty, one of Koko's parents ran after the man, but unfortunately lost sight of him." At 8 p.m., when store employees couldn't find Koko either, Mayu decided to call the police, while in the meantime, the culprit had made his way up north by bicycle and was captured on a security camera of a nearby gas station before turning east. At 8:10 p.m., the man dumps Koko's body in a drainage ditch leading to the Tsuboi River, about 600 meters from the supermarket where the girl's parents and investigators continued their search for Koko. Between 8:10 and 9 p.m., the man returned to his parental home, located around 1 kilometer from the drainage ditch. While seemingly calm, his mother noticed that his shirt was wet, and when she pressed him about it, he just asked to take a bath. This was unusual since he usually wouldn't take baths. Shortly after, the man sent one of his friends the message, "Summon Icarus," which according to his friend meant that he wanted to play games together. However, a second message read, "My parents have cut off my internet connection." When the friend asked if he was okay, the third and final message the friend received was, "It's normal. I'm used to it, so it's okay." That night, Koko's parents were advised to go home and stay inside, as investigators believed the 3-year-old may have been kidnapped. While the parents nervously waited for a ransom call to come in, police continued their investigation. The following day, on the 4th of March, while going over security camera footage, investigators had noticed a suspicious man scouting the bathroom area for hours, and when they noticed he followed Koko on her way to the toilet, investigators marked the man as the main suspect in Koko's disappearance. The CCTV images were broadcast publicly, and investigators inquired local residents until a former teacher told police, "Isn't this my former student?" Investigators immediately made their way to the student's parental home, and when a 20-year-old, Yoshihiro Yamaguchi, was voluntarily questioned, he admitted to the crime, telling officers, "In the first floor's disabled toilet, I strangled her to death. I then put her in a backpack and carried her out. She was making a fuss, so I killed her. I dumped her body in the river." Yamaguchi was then arrested and brought officers to the drainage ditch in which he had dumped Koko's body. In the meantime, Koko's parents still had no clue of what was happening. However, not long after, both parents were brought to the police station, and Father Seiichiro described this moment as follows. "It was a cold, narrow room in the basement. There was something like a small table, and something covered with a green sheet was lying on top of it. I didn't think it was my daughter. My wife and I both knew it couldn't be. We thought it was something that had belonged to my daughter. However, when the police officer asked us to please check, he lifted the green sheet, and what we saw was undoubtedly my eldest daughter Koko." She had her eyes closed and wasn't moving at all. At that point, neither my wife nor I could bear to face our daughter's death. When officers told the parents they were going to perform an autopsy, Mayu was so horrified that she broke her molars by biting down from shock. At 10:20 p.m., Kumamoto prefectural police officers searched Yamaguchi's parental home and seized about 50 items from his room. The items included a backpack, bicycle, computer, cell phone, and explicit manga and DVDs depicting young girls. On the 5th of March, the autopsy of Koko Shimizu was performed and only showed signs of asphyxiation without any other signs of trauma or resistance. On the 7th of March, the funeral for Koko Shimizu was held, and a photo of her hand in one of her parents' hands was released as the last photo of Koko before the funeral. Seiichiro later explained his emotions surrounding the funeral, saying, "On the day of the funeral, when I saw everyone crying and dressed in black in the funeral hall, I felt that I had caused my daughter to suffer like this, that I had killed her, that I had not fulfilled my responsibilities as a father, and that all the responsibility was mine." That same month, on the 6th, Yoshihiro Yamaguchi was brought to the Kumamoto Public Prosecutor's office on suspicion of abandoning a body, and after a more thorough search of the dumping site on the 9th, the 1st Investigative Division re-arrested Yamaguchi on suspicion of murder on the 22nd. What drove the 20-year-old Yoshihiro Yamaguchi, a social welfare student described as cheerful and earnest by his family, to commit such a terrible act? Yamaguchi lived with his 2-year younger brother, father, and mother in a home about 1 kilometer from the scene of the crime. The house is described to be located about 300 meters from the Shimizu house and near Koko's nursery school, though it's believed Yamaguchi never met the young victim before he killed her. While the family seemed ordinary on the surface, Yoshihiro didn't get along with his father, and both neighbors and classmates describe abnormal behavior by Yamaguchi from a young age. Yoshihiro Yamaguchi attended Yunnan Junior High School and didn't seem to fit in with peers, with one classmate saying, "Since he was young, he was restless and had a strange personality, so he was often picked on by more prominent students in his class. Boys would call him annoying, and girls would call him gross out loud. He would mutter to himself during class." One acquaintance also mentioned that when he was in junior high school, Yoshihiro would leave his curtains slightly open in his second-floor room and stare at kindergarten-age girls passing by his house. And around the second year of junior high school, a neighborhood resident witnessed the following. "In the middle of the night, I would hear strange screams and loud banging sounds as if people were kicking the floor and walls. These screams seemed to stop once he graduated junior high school, making neighbors believe it was just a phase." One online comment even reads, "I went to the Yunnan Junior High School. I knew he would do it someday." When he entered Buntoku High School, the bullying seemed to have stopped, unlike Yamaguchi's unusual and unpredictable habits, according to one high school classmate. He wasn't bullied in high school, but he would get angry easily over nothing and get into arguments, so everyone avoided him. Nevertheless, Yamaguchi was said to be a serious student who joined the tea ceremony club, served in the student council alongside his best friend, and volunteered to pick up trash. In his 3rd year, he and his best friend even appeared on a debate TV program with Kumamoto's mayor. At the time, Yamaguchi reportedly praised those who improved Kumamoto and stated he believed the prefecture's future is bright. Yamaguchi's two-faced character continued when he entered the Department of Social Welfare at Kumamoto's Gakuen University. On the surface, Yamaguchi seemed to do well, applying as a volunteer to help disabled students and even gathering local high school students near his house to teach baseball. But when classmates were inquired, one fellow student mentioned, At the welcome party, he didn't seem to fit in with his classmates, so everyone kept their distance. Also, when he was asked about the type of girl he liked at the party, he apparently answered, "I like little kids." At that point, rumors started to spread that Yamaguchi is a lolicon. The term lolicon is associated with explicit or suggestive content of underage girls, often in the form of anime or manga. According to other sources, Yamaguchi even specified with a straight face that he liked girls around elementary school age. Despite reports of Yamaguchi to have stalked girls and showed generally strange behavior, his uncle mentioned him to have a girlfriend at one point and that he seemed to attend classes properly in his first year. This all changed when in June of 2010, Yamaguchi's best friend since middle school passed away due to an illness. The friend always seemed to have a positive influence on Yamaguchi's otherwise unusual character and was the reason he joined the student council in the first place. The death seemed to impact Yamaguchi severely as he started to skip more classes in the following months and finally stopped attending altogether from November onward. Yamaguchi seemed to find a positive influence in his maternal grandfather, who would often pick the student up from his part-time job as a waiter at a wedding hall and would listen to his stories. Other than that, Yamaguchi seemed to spend a lot of his time at video rental stores and convenience stores to browse magazines and watch anime. He was also supposedly addicted to games, with one source saying, "He plays too many online games and can't seem to distinguish between reality and the virtual world." The ongoing clashes with his father would allegedly turn violent at times, causing the man to rarely speak to one another, with the exception of mediated interactions by his mother. Another fight broke out about a week before Koko's death, which supposedly even turned into a physical altercation. After Koko's death, Yamaguchi's father was called in for questioning and simply said, "I'm sorry," with his head down in shame for not being able to prevent his son's horrific actions. After an extended period of evaluation, the Kumamoto District Public Prosecutor's Office indicted Yamaguchi on charges of murder, indecent assault resulting in death, and abandonment of a corpse. The guilt-ridden father, Seiichiro's thoughts were conflicted at the time, saying, "Do we really need a trial? As I just said, since I'm the one at fault, there's no need to go to trial, and I will never meet the murderer. That's how I really feel. However, I wanted to get revenge on the person who killed my daughter, so I decided to go to trial anyway." On the 17th of October 2012, the first hearing was held at Kumamoto's District Court under Judge Yoshihiro Matsuo. In a press conference prior to the hearing, Seiichiro expressed his anger, stating, "Despite the terrible things he did, up until now, we have not received a single letter of apology from either the culprit, his relatives, or his sibling." At the start of the trial, Koko's parents reportedly entered the courtroom holding a portrait of Koko and one of her stuffed animals in honor of their daughter. At the time, the defense denied murder and rather pleaded for body abandonment and indecent assault resulting in death, arguing, "She tried to scream, so in a state of panic, he held her down in order to not get noticed." Yamaguchi himself stated, "My hand that was holding her shoulder slipped and ended up on her neck. I did not intend to kill her." With Koko's parents demanding the death penalty to make sure Yamaguchi will not find his way back into society, the prosecution opened their case by saying, "The defendant, who was interested in elementary school girls, approached the girl with the intention of committing indecent acts and killing her. When the girl made a fuss, he strangled her for at least 4 to 5 minutes, causing her to suffocate to death." The prosecution pointed out that a large number of explicit adult content-related mangas that included minors were found during a search of his house. In addition, Yamaguchi had been at the store for over 3 hours, showing suspicious behavior according to witnesses and CCTV footage. Seiichiro described the trial as follows. Sitting there with his head down and expressionless, the perpetrator did not look like a human being to me. I wonder what I am to this culprit while I'm giving my statement. I wonder whether my words and feelings would be conveyed to someone like this. When the perpetrator was interrogated about his date of birth and other personal details, he was smiling. We were forced to watch this footage during the trial. On the 29th of October 2012, Judge Yoshihiro Matsuo concluded there to be an intent to kill, causing Yamaguchi to be charged with murder and indecent assault resulting in death. The court denied that the murder had been planned, rather stating that the intent to kill arose when Seiichiro's voice could be heard through the door. The by then 20-year-old was handed down a life sentence with the verdict saying, "The pain the girl felt as she was strangled for several minutes without being able to resist, and the fear she felt in a hopeless situation where she could not even call for help are indescribable. The motive was extremely selfish, and the grief of the family who suddenly lost their family member is great." Afterwards, one of the 7 jurors said in a press conference that she didn't sense Yamaguchi to have any remorse. And on the 8th of November 2012, the defendant appealed the verdict. In 2013, the first appeal hearing was held on the 1st of March, but less than 2 weeks later on the 13th, the Fukuoka High Court upheld the life imprisonment sentence, dismissing the defendant's claims that his Asperger's syndrome diagnosis may have influenced his actions. On June 25th, Supreme Court Justice Yu Shiraki dismissed the defendant's final appeal, and with that, finalized his life sentence. According to Japan's Ministry of Justice, the average length of time served by life sentence is nearly 32 years, after which in a small percentage of cases, parole is given. This would mean that Yamaguchi would be in his 50s, around 2040, when he could get out on parole. Soon after the trial, in Yamaguchi's subsequent incarceration, the perpetrator sent a 2.5-page letter to the Shimizu family. The bereaved family decided not to read the letter for years, as the trial had severely impacted them to the point that Father Seiichiro had reportedly been brought to the hospital during part of the trial where Yamaguchi was explaining what happened. However, in 2018, Seiichiro decided to read through the words of his daughter's killer, with him saying, While the content of the letter isn't made public, it's stated it contains details that were not revealed during trial and that Yamaguchi hadn't been forthcoming. Some speculated the letter to have said that Yamaguchi's real motive was to see a young girl die. The letter supposedly didn't contain any words of remorse and did not apologize to the family. The father asked his lawyer to burn the letters after his death so that his family would never have to read the words of Koko's killer. After the incident, reporters surrounded the bereaved family's house while the guilt-ridden Seiichiro and Mayu grieved. The family eventually moved to Mayu's parents' home to shelter from the public attention until the case got overshadowed by the Great East Japan earthquake and subsequent tsunami about a week after Koko's death on the 11th of March 2011. Nevertheless, the parents kept blaming themselves for Koko's death, with Father Seiichiro stating, "There was only one door between me and Koko. If I had kicked it down at that time, I think I could have saved her life. It was my fault that we had to go through such a scary and painful experience at that supermarket. It never went away, and I caused my family so much pain because I couldn't protect Koko." Unfortunately, these feelings were amplified by reporters, internet users, and even attendees of lectures that Koko's parents started to deliver about the importance of life. One comment said, "You killed your daughter," and another mentioned, "What kind of parents let their 3-year-old child go to the toilet alone? That's a pretty easygoing way to raise a child. This happened because the parents didn't protect her." The backlash and pressure grew to a point where the parents contemplated ending their lives, but were eventually able to move forward with the help of victim support groups and the will to give their sons the best life they could have. Seiichiro and Mayu feared for the well-being of their sons for a long time, keeping them inside the house and away from school for months. After the incident, the eldest son lost hearing in one ear due to the stress of the incident, and the youngest son, who had been in the store when Koko was killed, blamed himself for not protecting his sister. They eventually got back on their feet, and the 3 sons have moved out and tried their best to live their life in honor of their sister, and have decided to work on crime victim support activities just like their parents. The parents said in a more recent interview, they have suffered and worried for 13 years, but one step at a time, they're finding their feet on the ground and spreading their wings, carrying their sister's hopes and dreams.
家族でそれぞれができることを、思いをしっかり持って、今後も前へ進んでいきたいと思います。
About 3 years after Koko's death, Seiichiro started to give lectures about the importance of life across the country as an outlet for his emotions. In the past 10 years, the bereaved father has given over 300 lectures across Japan, frequently accompanied by his wife, reliving that horrific day in order for his daughter to not be forgotten.
私はなぜあの時娘を一人でトイレにやったのかと今でもすごく自分を恨んでおります。これは私が生きていく間絶対になくならないことだと思います。
Seiichiro aims to prevent more crime and advocates to help victims, stating, "As a victim myself, why should the victim have to suffer more than the perpetrator is a question I think about every day. I thought it might be difficult, but I felt like Koko was right there supporting me, so I was able to speak with compassion." In 2023, Seiichiro even completed the Kumamoto Castle Marathon, wearing a t-shirt with Koko's name on the back in her memory.
自分の達成感じゃなくて、なんか娘と一緒に走ってきた 42.15 キロだったなと。
Mother Mayu didn't cut her hair for years after Koko's death to let the hair her daughter touched remain uncut. Her daughter had always complimented her hair, and she couldn't bring herself to get rid of it, even after stress damaged her hair significantly. However, on the 13th anniversary of Koko's death, Mayu said, "We've passed the 13th anniversary safely, and I've tried my best. This time, I want to convince myself that I'm going to be okay. I also feel that maybe in order to start a new beginning, I should cut my hair. I know that my daughter is always with me." The deciding few minutes in that Kumamoto supermarket on the 3rd of March 2011 significantly impacted the lives of many. Without remorse from the culprit himself, Yamaguchi's grandparents can only begin to pick up the pieces, with the culprit's exhausted grandfather saying, "I'm really sorry to the victims. I rather wanted Yoshihiro to have killed me instead. I'm answering interview questions not because I love my grandchild, but because I want to apologize to the other party." Yoshihiro's parents also said, "We are truly sorry." The bereaved parents state that time doesn't ease their pain, and that remembering the incident brings them right back to how they felt that fateful day. Regardless, the parents stated, "I don't want my daughter's story to be just a sad tale about a little girl dying. With that in mind, Mayu talks to a photo of her daughter every single morning to keep her spirit alive. With the Hina Matsuri dolls that Koko made on the day of her death still displayed at the bereaved family's home, the Shimizu family is left fighting for a better society with feelings of sorrow and guilt because of a few horrible moments that made Koko leave this world too soon.